Hello, welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B, and I've got another great episode for you today. Today, I'm talking with Kristen Autenrieth. She is a mindset and manifestation coach who helps women recognize their own red flags, find their inner badass, and trust themselves so they can set their own reality on fire. And Kristen is on fire. I love watching all of the content that she puts out. She's got such a fun, don't give a fuck energy, and I love that about her. So, we have a really fun conversation. We are talking all about manifestation. We are talking all about authenticity, what it means to come into your own authenticity, what authenticity even what the root of authenticity even means, and how persistence and accountability play a really big role in truly being able to manifest the lifestyle and the life and the health that you want. This is a really great conversation for anyone to listen to, no matter where they're at on their health journey or on their life journey, but especially if you're in the beginning stages of figuring your stuff out, figuring out why you've been stuck in these patterns that you've seen over your life, or why all of a sudden you are stuck in this health experience, or stuck in this relationship, or stuck in this job or scenario that just doesn't sit right with you anymore or isn't comfortable, and you want to shift through that, but you can't quite figure out how because you don't really know how you got there in the first place. This is a really powerful conversation to help you figure out where to start and how to start unraveling and uncovering your role in the scenario, as well as how to figure out where your authenticity lies in your journey and how to continue to develop your own path, staying true to yourself as you go. We get really deep into some things here, and it definitely touched home for both Kristen and I. And I don't want to unravel the whole conversation for you right in the intro, so I'm gonna pretty much leave it at that. But to just encourage you to listen to this with an open heart and an open mind, and to go into this thinking, how can I improve my own situation? How can I step more into my power? Well, this is going to help give you some of those tools to start that process or continue on the process that you're already on. So I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation. Kristen is super fun to listen to. Again, stay open-minded and don't be afraid to do the hard things. Don't be afraid to step into things that are uncomfortable. Know that when you do that, amazing things are just on the other side. All right. So please enjoy this episode with Kristen Autenrieth. Kristen Autenrieth, welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm
Hi,
really
Hannah.
looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of of course. Well, I've known you for a little while now. You were in San Diego for a brief moment, and we got to actually meet in person before
I know our
you moved
crossover
back
was very
east.
short.
But I'm so thrilled to still have this connection with you through our business coaching program that we're both in. And I just have been watching you grow through your coaching, and I absolutely love everything you talk about. Manifestation being one of your big topics, right? And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think manifestation can get such a bad rap. It's kind of like positive attitude or gratitude gets the bad rap of, oh, just put on your rose colored glasses and wish for what you want in life and it's all just going to magically happen, right? So, can you give us a overview of what actual manifestation means?
Yes. A loaded question, a brief overview. Okay. So, yeah. So I stepped into this just because I had the weird, I want to call it an ego death. I don't know if that's really what it was, but that's what immediately what I felt. And it just sent me into this frenzy of personal development and manifestation. And I got caught in all of those traps that you talked about. Like when you go on the internet and you look up manifesting and you find these coaches, especially ones that are geared toward manifesting a specific person, manifest an SP. That's why I got involved. I was missing somebody. I wanted him back in my life so bad. And it was like, just do this and just do that. And just say these affirmations and just be positive about it and focus on your desire and don't let your desire go. And that was quite a few years ago. And what I've ultimately realized is a lot of manifestation coaches, yes, they teach like the more woo-woo stuff, gratitude and affirmations. Those are important things. There's just more depth to it. But really, what a lot of manifestation coaches teach, in my opinion, is a stronger, insecure attachment to a specific thing in this world. Um, when you focus on something so hard that is external of you, you're attached to something specific. Basically, what you're saying is, I can't truly be happy without that specific thing. And what I teach is a twist on that, because when you think about the things that you want, your brain actually doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary, between what's happening outside of your body and what you're thinking about. It elicits the same chemicals and the same internal response. So therefore, when you're thinking about something that you really want, you're eliciting that feeling of having it. And if you hold on to that feeling, that's truly what you want from that manifestation, from that thing that you want, from that person you want. You want that feeling. But we as humans get so caught up in this idea of, well, I have to have that specific thing to get this feeling. That's where we go wrong. And if you just release the need for the feeling to come from that specific thing, whether it be money, whether it be health, whether it be weight loss, whether it be a romantic relationship or a family, whatever, just release the outside attachment and allow that feeling to exist within your being. And then when you detach from the specific things outside of you, you really open all these doors and there's all these new channels of how that feeling can really truly come to you in the way that is most aligned with on the path of least resistance. But we don't get that part, and we hold like white knuckle grips onto things external from us. And then we're like, why isn't this happening for me? Why isn't it happening? That's why. If that makes
So
sense. That was a long-winded answer.
now it does make sense. And there's 15 different directions that I want to take this.
Story of my life every 10 minutes.
So how do we release that white knuckle grip? Like, where do we start unraveling that?
That's such a great question. There's so many different ways to go about that. And I think I would start with, when you think about something and then it feels good, and then you come out of that little imaginative state and you feel that sinking feeling of, I still don't have this thing. That's the lack mentality. Something is missing from my life. I cannot be complete without that thing. I can't be happy without that thing. I will never be fulfilled without that thing. Start there. And this is little things like, instead of focusing so hard on what is missing from your life, focus on the tiniest things in your day. Because when you're shifting this, like when you live in a lack mentality, this is going to be difficult to shift. And it's also, that's part of manifestation. It's all light and love. And if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. When you're reprogramming your brain to go down a new neural pathway, it's uncomfortable because your brain is, whoa, this is not normal. This is not familiar. And it's definitely not safe. We are going to die, abort mission. That sounds dramatic, but that's what your subconscious is doing. And so, yeah, I would start with these little things in your day that just bring you that little bit of warmth within, like my cup of coffee in the morning. Focus hard on like how just fulfilling and warm and cozy that feels. And this does sound very woo-woo, even as it's coming out of my mouth. This is what I teach. And I'm like, this is so cheesy, Kristen. It's these little things like, oh, my favorite sweater's clean today. And I don't know, but like my cat is laying on my bed right now and she looks so cute and it just brings me this little feeling. The more you focus on that, the more you're actually reprogramming. You're creating a new baseline of consciousness to that comfort, that peace, that safety. And you're pulling it away from, I don't have this and I don't have that, and this is missing, and there's a hole in my life, and there's a void here. And when is this thing going to come into my life? Now you are grounding yourself in the moment and you're living in the now, and you're saying to yourself, look at all the shit that I do have. And it's these little things that will add up to the big things. And so anybody
It's
can do
kind of
this with
like
their life.
right. And it's basically starting a small with a small gratitude practice. Like you're shifting your focus away from the lack and into gratitude, into love, into positive, focusing on something positive, anything positive. Like you said, oh, I can look out my window and hey, it stopped raining. It's been raining for days. What a beautiful blue sky I have right now, to
Yes,
look at. The
it
simplest
is.
things. Mhm.
And it,
And
it will build
so,
that momentum. You have to persist in it though. And a lot of people, it's hard to persist. That's where it gets difficult. And people go, no, I'll just be miserable.
right, because being miserable is your nervous system's happy place.
It is if it's been programmed there. Like when we're little, our brains are like blank canvases. It's that subconscious mind. So if you've been taught over time, like if you had parents who just focused on misery all the time, they lived in lack, we never have enough, it's never good enough. That's now the baseline for your brain, because your brain is going, all right, this is how we lived. Yeah, it was scary, but we made it through. So let's keep doing it. Don't change anything. Let's keep doing that. If for those of us who had parents who were thriving and had a abundant mindset and taught us emotional control and all of these things, that somewhere along that line, that generational trauma was broken by parents or grandparents. And now these people have that baseline programmed in their subconscious of, I have an abundant mindset. And that's great for them. They're probably not listening to my podcast or watching my content because they just don't get it. But for most of us, yeah, we've been through some sort of trauma, which sounds like a dramatic word, but it's little things. When as women we're taught, don't be too much, don't be too much, don't be too much. So a lot of us carry around this subconscious programming of just shh, just quiet down or you're not lovable. And we don't realize that. We don't realize we're shrinking ourselves and putting ourselves in a box. And now I forget where I was going with this.
Well, there's a million places it could go. I think when I made the statement that being miserable is your nervous system's happy place, what I mean is when agreeing with you, when we've been subconsciously programmed to essentially a fight or flight response based on all these things that could be minor little incidences through our life, or could be major traumas and anything in between. We end up putting ourselves or finding ourselves in that box of safety, which is this is the situation. This is how I'm used to responding. This is how I stay safe. Let's continue that pattern at all costs. And so when we try to start recognizing that we're in this lack conscious state, and we start trying to train our brains to catch it and to redirect, it is, like you said, it's super uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable for a number of different reasons, which I think we'll get into. But back when I was first starting to learn about mindset and all these things, then I was listening to Esther Hicks. And one
I
of the
love
things
them.
that Esther Hicks would say, yeah, or I'm sorry, Abraham Hicks,
Abraham Hicks. Yeah,
right?
it's Esther,
Abraham
what's
Hicks,
his
yeah.
name? And they have Abraham. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff, though. Good stuff.
exactly. Fantastic stuff. And one of the things that they would say is you have basically 17 seconds, I think, to catch that essentially that lack mindset as that lack thought as it comes out. And if you can catch it and basically flip it or redirect it in 17 seconds, then you can shift that energy before that energy kind of ripples. If you let it go longer than that, then you basically set that energetic ripple. And I don't know if there's any science necessarily to back that up, but I find that it's true. And the more that I started being able to recognize my lack consciousness thoughts that were coming out or actions that were coming out and recognizing my patterns, the quicker I could redirect it. And the more you slowly get used to redirecting it, the easier it gets. And so it's a slow shift that you have to stay committed.
Yeah, persistence is one of my values in my course and my program. And just if I bring on a new client, persistence, accountability, and self awareness are for me, the three main things that will morph you into just a kick ass manifester. And the more accountability that you can have for yourself, the more power and control you are giving yourself over your life, which I will say is a very difficult thing because accountability, especially when it's new, can feel a lot like blame. And with blame comes shame. So when you say, I take accountability for this, all of a sudden, your subconscious goes, well, it's all our fucking fault now. And as a manifestor, you're the creator of your own reality. And so it becomes, if I'm living in a situation I don't want to be in and I take accountability for it and I'm the creator, that means it's my fault that I'm in this reality. That's a really hard thing to push through, that discomfort. And I had a crap ton of this when I started learning about manifesting. And my big thing was always dating. It was always a boy I was like way too hooked on and couldn't let go. And it just debilitated me. And these would be guys that I didn't date very long. And I was like, how does this keep happening? The thing that I realized though, when I pushed through all that discomfort of the shame and the blame, and I got to the other end of it, that's where all the control is. Because if my belief system is creating my reality, so you have your beliefs, they create your thoughts. A belief is just a thought you continue to think over and over and over. Your thoughts then create your feelings. And that's that momentum that you mentioned right there is, okay, I have this belief that I'm not worthy. And that belief creates thoughts of me, just of people, I don't know, shitting on me. And those thoughts create feelings of anxiety. And then you let it go to another thought and another thought and another thought. And this is how we get into chronic anxiety. But when you stop that momentum, like you said, and you just go, wait a minute, I don't have to think these thoughts. I can think something else. And you start to think something else. And then you force yourself to think something else that's good and positive. And then another one, and then another one. And if you persist in this, it will happen naturally. And one day you'll look around and go, wow, wait, I didn't think anything negative. The version of me 2, 3, 4 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long this takes, wouldn't have done what I'm doing now. That's progress. And yes, it takes a while. It's another thing these manifestation coaches will talk about is like instant manifestations. And I'm like, it boils my
Right.
blood because this
I know.
shit takes time. Have grace with yourself. Ease up on
Mhm.
yourself.
Yes. I'll say that. I'll mirror that for the health world, especially with chronic health. Yes, I think in my bio, I do say I'm getting you on the road to managing your symptoms in 30 days. Yes, I'm teaching you a lot in the first 30 days. That doesn't mean you're going to be magically well and better in 30 days. This is a process and it takes time to implement these things, right? And but it can be like a kind of like a slow domino effect, right? You shift that first, you recognize that first lack consciousness thought, and that domino slowly tips. And then it slowly hits the next one and the next one. And eventually it just takes off and it goes around the whole spiral. But it takes time. It takes
I
time to
like that
get there.
analogy actually. And I was thinking to take that one step further. It's also almost like when you're doing the slow work, it's like lining up the dominoes so that they're quote
Yes.
unquote perfect. Let's not use the word perfection because it doesn't exist. But yeah, you have to take the time to line the dominoes up. And then once it hits, yes, that momentum and it's just, whoa. And you said something else. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, with the health stuff, I watched that documentary recently. I don't know if you've seen it, the twin flame one on, I think it was
Uh-uh.
on Hulu. And yeah, that's dating stuff. And we don't have to get into the whole twin flame thing, but it's just to point this out to everybody with anything, how freaking powerful your mind is. Now, this documentary uses it for evil, but these people were like called into, it was like a coaching program. And not to knock coaching programs because they're not like this, but these people really utilized this idea of a twin flame, that they knew who your soulmate connection twin flame was. And this was all done over Zoom. And they hooked these people in. They took thousands of dollars from them over and over repeatedly and kept telling them, you have to do this and you have to do that. And this is your twin flame and this is your twin flame. And these people were so invested in this simply because their belief underneath of it all was that this was real and that I don't have the power to find this on my own. And my point is to shift that in the other direction. These people could not walk away from people on the computer. Like they were just being so brainwashed into believing that their soulmate was like in this group. And they were doing some crazy things. You got to go watch it. But my point is, if that can happen in a negative direction with that kind of momentum, imagine what can happen in the other direction. If you shift your thoughts and you shift your beliefs and you keep digging and you pull up this bullshit that's in your brain, that's in your subconscious mind, that is just creating these things in your life that you don't want, and you just start to reprogram them. And you just have a little belief in the background that goes, what if? What if everything works out the way that I want? And watch what happens. I think a lot more people would be really, really surprised in just persisting in that momentum.
Yeah, I agree. My a previous podcast guest that I had on, Andrea Marshall, she was talking about the power of the word yet. So
Good
if
one. I
you
love
have,
that.
yeah, yeah. So if you have a negative belief of I'm like, I just can't find Mr. Right, for example, because I know that you do a lot of manifestation around being single and manifesting your real, true relationship with a partner, right? So if you have that core belief of I can't find the right guy or I can't find the right girl, put the word yet at the end of that sentence. I can't I just haven't found the right person yet. That opens up a door to a world of possibilities. It doesn't put it puts like a comma at the end of the sentence instead of huge solid black dot.
Exactly. I imagine like a little up ramp at the end of that sentence. It
Yes.
just hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
And you couldn't be more spot on with that. And it's full circle, like those little tiny things that you think this doesn't matter. It matters. Another good one is the word and instead of but, because your subconscious mind knows these things. And so when you say yet, it's just like a line of code programmed into a computer that is your brain that goes, okay, there's still a possibility for that. Yet equals possibility. Brain logged in, information logged. And it's I love you, but I love you and like now you've allowed, because your subconscious mind also knows, well, when you say but, it means we can't have both. But when you say and, it means I can love you and you cannot be good enough for me. I don't feel good and I'm going to at some point in your world, in the holistic health world. I know you work with people who have chronic illness, and it's just shift that. When you wake up in the morning and you don't feel good, I don't feel good and I will soon. Allow those two things to exist. And I don't feel good yet. It's the same thing. Like it just, the power of your mind is wild. And I wish they would teach us this as kids, because the whole world would not be what it is with the systems in place and the governments, and a different conversation for a different day if all of us knew the power of our mind. But I really do. I wish they would teach us the creative powers and just allow us to open our own doors using our thoughts. But again, another conversation for another day.
Right. We need to restructure. I think there's actually a grassroots thing that started really during COVID when so many people ended up homeschooling. And that homeschooling trend is continuing. And I think there's hope there that things like that will start being taught to more
Oh, that would
kids.
make my heart so happy.
Another thing too to add into that part of the conversation is just the idea of curiosity. I talk about this a lot, but it's really become like my go-to word is like staying curious. So when you say things like yet, like I'm not healthy yet, or I'm learning all these new things to implement, like these new health routines to implement, and I'm not seeing any results yet, that keeps the door open to curiosity. So keeping the door open
Yeah,
to curiosity is like just not having that closed, fixed mindset. It's keeping possibilities open. You're acknowledging that there are possibilities out there. Maybe you just haven't found the right possibility for you yet. It
absolutely.
keeps it, yeah.
Yeah. And I say that a lot too, back to the like accountability and shaming and blaming. Curiosity is a great way to approach that as well, because we have these parts of ourselves that we want to push down and suppress and keep in our shadow, and which is basically the dark parts of ourselves. And we're so afraid to look at them because we think like people don't like that about me, which really means I don't like that about me. But if you just allow them to exist and just be like, "Hey, I'm curious about this part of me. I don't like it, and I'm gonna be curious about it." See how that works? And it's just by doing that, I always imagine my shadow self is the bad parts of me, right? So if I shove them down in the dark and I suppress them, they stay in the dark. But if I just open that curiosity door, just one beam of light will come in, and that light is love. I'm actually giving love to these shadow parts of myself, and that is what heals. The only thing in this world that can really heal is love, which is light. So just that one beam of light coming into the shadow is not healing the whole thing, but it's a healing beam of light that can start that momentum again, that momentum that we talked about earlier. And it's, we just, we, as a society, we spend so much time shaming ourselves and others. And it's just open that door. Let that one beam of light in and let that shitty part of you exist.
I like to think of the dark sides not as being bad things about ourselves, just that they're more deeply ingrained into our subconscious patterning. So the more we open the curiosity doors, the more light cracks in, and the more we can really uncover and dig up from the darkness. We can start to recognize these patterns that were running in the back
Mm.
of the system just on autopilot that we weren't even aware we had hit the start button to, right?
Yeah.
So just another way of looking at the darkness. I think some people get scared to go there and go through that the dark night of the soul that everybody talks about in the woo-woo worlds, and as if it's like this deep, evil, dark thing, and it's not. It's a part of you. It's just something
Yeah.
that you haven't shined light on yet. That's all it is.
And
And it's there
typically
for
it's
a
in the
reason. And
dark. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say it has its own purpose, right? It's there for a reason. It has a function, and that function at one point was serving you. It was keeping you safe in some form or fashion. And now it's not really working for your benefit. So that's where we need to start cracking the light in and examining what's going on down there. Let me bring this into the light, destigmatize it, give it some love, and start to
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like that. And it's so true. That's the only way to really bring these all to the surface, is just to shine the light on them. And I was gonna say, typically, these things are put in the dark for us in our subconscious because somebody or something outside of us told us that they were wrong or they were bad. We that not to bring up the whole system again, but in school, we're taught to sit down and shut up and fit in and stay in line and be a quote unquote worker bee, be a good student. And so, for me, it's what's the word? I was gonna say aggressive. That's not the word I was looking at. Like just obnoxious sometimes. Like I'm out there and I'm boisterous and I have a big personality and I have big emotions. And for so long, I shoved that like in a bag, tied it up, put it in a box, locked the box, put the box in the ground and filled it with dirt because I was like, you can't be that way. There are no rules to anything in life. I don't care what anybody tells you. There are laws. Please don't take that as me telling you to go break a law. But there are no rules in terms of who you can be and how you can succeed with who you're being. And the more authentic you can be, the more success you're going to have. As our business coach says, the more you're going to win. Like it is inevitable that authenticity will breed success because authenticity is love. Like you are genuinely loving all parts of yourself in some way, shape, or form when you're being authentic. And that's that's it. You're winning right there. No matter what you have in the external world, who you have, what you have, and where you are, if you are being truly, truly authentic to who you are winning. And that full circle again is what will manifest you what you want in this life. All those feelings you want to have from things external from you, they will come if you are being truly authentic to who you are and holding on to that.
So let's talk about authenticity for a minute, because if I asked you or if I asked myself, what is the definition of authenticity? That can be a confusing answer because the
That's fair.
definition of authenticity might say looking at the history of my actions, for example, and I'm only being authentic if I'm staying true to the history of my actions. One might say, right?
Mm.
But, and I did a deep dive into this. It was probably over a year ago, so I'm not going to be able to regurgitate the exact answer here, but it when you break down the word, it has historical meanings, probably from
The Latin
Latin or
root
Greece.
of yeah.
Yeah, the Latin root of the word, and I can't tell you exactly now what it meant, but it essentially denied that definition and said that authenticity is really becoming essentially more of who you are meant to be. So you can become more and more authentic to your true self, and that doesn't need to look like your past self. So
Yeah.
I wanted to throw that out there and see how you respond to that.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is a confusing thing because it indicates, like, even the way I just said it with that big rant I just went on, it indicates that you have to be light and love all the time, like, I'm being authentic to me. I would Here's what I would say, ground yourself in this moment, whatever moment this is that you're in when you're thinking about authenticity, and honor how you're feeling in any given moment. That is my definition of authentic. It is I've been programmed a certain way up until this moment. All the work I've done with the traumas that I went through as a child and all the work I've done thereafter. This is who I am right now. So if you were to say something right now and I was to get triggered, typically speaking, what we do is we go, oh, and I might project that back on you and try and make that your fault or whatever, however I handle that trigger. In this moment, if I can honor those feelings, and we're all at various different stages, and my brain's going in 1,000 different directions right now, but it's however I choose to handle that in this moment might be authentic, but then I might reflect back on it, and the next time it happens, then I handle it a different way because I've grown. But as long as I'm in the moment honoring those feelings and not suppressing those feelings, not pushing those feelings away, not shaming myself, or trying my best not to do any of that because, again, we're at various different stages. There was a stage in my life where I shamed the shit out of myself. But now I find authenticity to be, hey, I'm a human being. I'm having an emotional reaction internally to something. I'm going to take a time out and go figure out where this is coming from and then talk to you or put a boundary in place or not talk to you again ever. I don't know what that looks like. But if you can allow those feelings to exist, I think that is truly authentic to who you are, because you're never not going to be triggered by something. You're a human being. We are emotional creatures who sometimes have rational thoughts. And you can't suppress your emotions because that's what creates an inauthentic version of you over time, where you're just people pleasing and you're putting yourself in a box and you're shrinking yourself. The more you can allow what you're feeling in any given moment to just exist, to just be, and then figure out what to do with it subsequently, that is my definition of authenticity, if that
And to
makes
take
sense.
that further, it does make sense. Yeah. And to take that further, you're talking about bottling up those emotions and those feelings and becoming inauthentic to what you're really feeling inside. Taking that energetically into a health viewpoint, that creates
Mm,
stagnation in the body. That
stuck energy.
creates stuck energy that affects your nervous system, and you're in more of a fight or flight state or potentially a freeze state, and you're losing that nervous system like flexibility to jump into fight or flight when needed and come back. Jump into
Yeah.
freeze if needed, come back to center. You're losing that ability to come back to center. And I think from all the people that I've talked to, all the research and stuff that's coming out, I really think that that is a very strong root cause for the majority of chronic illness.
Oh, I
Probably
completely
illness in
concur
general,
with
but
you.
yeah. So like the more we can start implementing what you're talking about, these little steps of beginning that manifestation process, it's really just, we could even lose the word manifestation and just say these little steps of becoming more authentic to you and to
Absolutely. I
acknowledging
think that's a
yourself and
great
to
way to
loving
put it.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and just allowing yourself to exist without shame. I think a lot of people with chronic illness would find that their symptoms decrease massively if they would start to just allow the parts of themselves that are just, like you said, it's stuck in there, it's stagnant, it's not healthy ever. And again, I wish they would teach us this early on in this process of life, but they don't for various different reasons. It's so vastly important, and I don't think a lot of people make the connection between health and mind, body and mind. Like, they're so intertwined with one another. It's it's wild.
Yeah. We hear the term mind, body, soul, but we don't really bring that concept in
Yeah.
and start applying it. But sounds really nice. Oh, I'm lighting my candles and taking a bath and I'm connecting my body, mind, and spirit. It's like, well, that helps, but that's not the real work. We got to
Yeah,
get
no,
deeper than
that's
that.
that's the relaxing work. That's the work you do after the
The
real work.
reward.
Yes, exactly. The real work
Oh,
is like sitting in the tub in the shower in a ball, crying your eyes out because you've uncovered something about yourself that you're like, "No, I don't wanna let it out."
exactly. Well, this whole conversation, what we just really got into, like, it actually really gave me goosebumps. And I even have a couple of tears, which makes me know
Oh,
that we really hit on something deep here that we're not talking about enough. And it definitely like hits home for me with things that I see now that I didn't see before, that all along the way led up to me getting hit super hard with mono, which was the like trigger for all of my autoimmune stuff. And yeah, so now we get to take a look back and we get to honor ourselves by acknowledging all those little steps and experiences along the way that led up to where we are now. So it's not the blame and shame game. It's it's just about acknowledgement and what did you say? Accountability of you didn't, it's not like I necessarily consciously chose all these little things, But it was just like one little thing that built on another, that built on another. And all of a sudden, I'm in this terrible relationship that was extremely stressful and emotionally abusive. And then I finally like free myself of that and I'm getting my life back. And then it's nope, Mac, mono, like you're down and out.
And it
And
gets to that point where it's like, why me? What the fuck did I do to deserve this?
right.
And what can I do? What can I do differently? Because I'm out of options. And it is in those moments when you realize, and I think you have, because now you're on a path, you're on your journey, and like you're teaching people about this now. And I have done this a lot with guys because that's my weakness. But it's like we're always exactly where we're supposed to be. And in my lowest moments, now I'm gonna tear up. In my lowest moments, when I have just looked down at my feet and been like, there's a reason you're standing here. There's a reason your heart is breaking into a million pieces, and it's gonna teach you something if you fucking let it. If you just open that door just a crack and let the lesson come in, it will, but you gotta let it. Like, this is not gonna break you. This is gonna make you. And those moments put me on my path to coaching too. And it's now I get to help people see what is inside of them and how they can grow and how they can harness that power within, which is something that if these men didn't quote unquote break me, which they didn't, I broke myself. If that didn't happen, there's no way it could have happened any other. Even one step in a different direction would have been a completely different life for me. And sure, maybe that life would have been great too, but this life is pretty fucking awesome. And so we're always where we're supposed to be. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That is a mantra that I say that recently. I've been saying that every day. So it will lead you to your purpose if you let it. But you gotta let it. You gotta let it.
You got to let it, you have to open your heart to it. And oh gosh, what was I going to say there? It's a process that doesn't you're never going to get to the end point, right? You're never going to be
Life
like
is a
I
life is a
figured the
journey, not a
last thing out
destination.
and I'm on a elevated level now. I'm like a spirit on earth, right? We are spirits on earth. It's a constant well, you can either look at it as like peeling the layers of the onion, right? There's always another layer,
As
and
always.
that's good. And we always want to keep getting closer and closer to center. Or you could say peeling back the layers of a rose or a lotus, right? Like however you want to look at it, because it is all a beautiful process, even when you're in the turmoil of it. Even when you're peeling
Yeah.
back the onion layers and you are sobbing on the bathroom floor, like you said, it's like there's gonna be beauty just beyond that.
Yeah.
So hold on. Just hold on.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And I think with that too, even in this conversation, like we go to a low, like a valley, but that valley takes us to a higher peak. And you cannot have opposing level peaks. Like you can't have one without the other. You can stay in the middle and you can keep it safe and nothing can hurt me here, nothing can hurt me. But then I'm not feeling all the love either. I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm not feeling satisfied. To hit that peak of satisfaction, you have to know the shit. It's the way life works. So you gotta take the risks and you gotta go through the pain and like you said, sobbing on the bathroom floor, like you just allow it and just know that there's like that rainbow on the other side because there always is. And don't
Yeah.
attach to the rainbow because then there's gonna be another storm. Just allow life. Just let it flow. It's a wonderful journey when you do that.
It is a wonderful journey and it's what life is about, I think. We there is no kid that's going to go through childhood without some sort of trauma. Now, even when they've
Absolutely.
had an amazing family that they've grown up with, it could literally just be mom's in a bad mood one day, snaps a little bit, and kid's not used to it. And that is like a trauma that sticks with them that they don't uncover until they're like in their 20s, right? So it just is what it is. It's part of the life experience. And the sooner that we can accept it, dig into it, and slowly become more and more authentic to ourselves as we peel those onion layers, like, the more beauty we can experience in the world.
Completely agree. I love that. This was a great conversation.
Oh my gosh. I'm like,
We're
I don't
both
think I've
crying.
I've never gotten this emotional on a podcast. With
Oh
that being
gosh.
said, is there anything that we haven't touched on yet, Kristen, or any final thoughts that you want to leave with our listeners?
What can I say without saying too much? Yeah, I think just allowing yourself to be who you are, allowing all parts of yourself to exist is like the overall message of this conversation, and it's so important. We need to keep spreading that message, I think, and teaching people how to be more true to themselves because that's what's gonna to get woo-woo, to raise that's what's gonna raise the level of consciousness up and the level of happiness though. Like we need more happy and satisfied and fulfilled people in this world because they're just a joy to be around.
They are a joy to be around. And even to add on that, as we each become more and more authentic, the less likely we are to just go along with the masses, go along with the rhetoric, go along with the system, so to
Don't
speak.
don't
And
be a
the more
sheep.
we can, yeah, don't be a sheep. The less likely you are to be a sheep, the more likely
Yeah.
you are to stand in your own power because you're grounded, because you know who you are. And therefore, you don't need to just follow what the next person says because you're thinking for
Yes.
yourself.
Totally. Love it.
Not to make this all about the system, but we got to bring it back there sometimes.
We've been all over the place this conversation, but this was awesome. Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
oh, you're welcome. I hope to have you on again and to dive even deeper into this next time. Thank you
Yeah,
so much,
absolutely.
Kristen.
You're welcome.
I knew that this was going to be such a fun conversation to have with Kristen. She has such a fun personality. She just says it like she sees it. But I didn't realize it was going to get quite so deep and really hit home personally for me as much as it did. And that just goes to show that I'm still in process. We're never finished processing because there's always something else there. And like I was saying, that is just part of it. That's part of being human, right? But the willingness and the openness to look at those things, to be curious, to tease out what's behind our patterns, that is so incredibly powerful. And so I really want to invite you to take a look at where you're authentic in your life and where you step out of that authenticity, where you are accountable in your life, where you lose some accountability for yourself, where you hold love for yourself, where you judge yourself. Starting to ask all those little questions gives you clues on where you can focus on. I still uncover thoughts that I'm like, really? Did I just think that about myself? Do I really believe that? Do I hold that to be true? It's crazy. But as you go along this process of essentially manifestation, manifesting your authentic self, you learn so much about yourself. You open the door to so many things you didn't even realize you were doing, places where you didn't realize you were holding yourself back, boxes that you didn't realize you were putting yourself in, stagnation that you were creating in the body, manifesting in illnesses or manifesting in patterns that aren't serving you. I'm glad that we had this conversation at the beginning of 2024, at the beginning of the year, because this is something that I really want to invite you to step into for yourself as you roll through this year. You might not be ready to start a new diet or to start like an exercise routine or to start a business, but this is something small that you can start with if you are looking for ways to improve yourself, but maybe maybe you have a chronic illness and that's why you're listening to this podcast and you're not ready to take on a full life change, but you can start just recognizing one thought that you have a day that is maybe I should shift that. Or what's behind that? And you can start this self-love practice because really that's what it is. It's a self-love practice. It's a gratitude practice. It's a manifestation practice, but it's all about self-love and authenticity. So a lot of what we talked about, I actually do coach on in my program. So if this speaks to you, this is where I start coaching. We start coaching with mindset, and manifestation is a part of that. So we really dive into limiting beliefs. We dive into these underlying patterns that are holding us back from moving forward in our health journeys, moving forward in our life in general. So I invite you to apply for a call with me if you want to dive deeper on this. We can have a free strategy session and really dive into what you're struggling with in health and life and see if we can't open that door a little bit, shine some light on some things that are holding you back and what you can do, your next best steps to start moving forward and working through some of those stuck places for you. So I look forward to connecting with you. Please, please apply for that call. What are we waiting for? It's 2024. Like we have the whole year ahead of us. Let's make the conscious decision to make a shift in our life this year. Okay. Small shift, big shift, whatever. Let's just decide to make a shift. And let's see if I can help you with that. If I can help you identify a path. Okay. So I look forward to hearing from you. And thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like this podcast, to subscribe. And this is an episode that needs to be shared, that needs to be listened to. So I would greatly appreciate it if you would take a moment to share this with somebody that you care about. Share this with somebody that you love, somebody that you think could really benefit from what Kristen and I talked about today. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next episode.